Okay. Well, since I had my speaker on, I know that the audio is working. So welcome everybody to our first Environment and Climate Committee meeting of 2023. I am going to start with the roll call, and then we'll work our way through an exciting agenda with new members as well. So for roll call, either if we have people joining online, so just unmute yourself because we can't always see everybody. And then if you're here, just say that you're here. Starting with Covey.
Are we gonna do introductions for the roll call?
Oh, right. Yeah, that was in my notes. And we're going to do introductions in the roll call since we have new members. So Covey, are you here?
Introduce
I think we can just go through and just introduce our own names.
Yeah, that works.
We thought that would be a nice way of allowing everyone to introduce themselves.
If you want to introduce your role in the community, which can be as broad as you want, and either a committee that if you are an existing member, a subcommittee or something that you've worked on the ECC, or kind of what background or experience you think of yourself bringing to the committee.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Covey Choksey. I've been on the committee since its founding for the last 2 years. I currently work for Central Oregon Land Watch. Tomorrow is my last day. And then I'm transitioning to working on my own chai business, Covey's Chai, that I'll be starting hopefully over the next couple of months. I just accepted a part-time position at the Environmental Center. So that position is the Rethink Waste Program Coordinator, which I'm super excited about. On the committee, I've been involved on many committees or working groups, including the Waste and Materials Working Groups, the Home Energy Score Working Group, the Climate Emergency Declaration Working Group, and a couple other working groups. And I've really enjoyed being able to contribute in many different ways to this committee, which is my first time being involved in any kind of committee for public government, I guess. And I've been in Bend for 4 years.
Awesome. We'll do it in logical order, not written order.
Hello, Serena Dietrich. I've been in Bend 10 years now. I was the sustainability director for Deschutes Brewery for a long time. I ventured out on my own a few years ago. I focus in manufacturing and organizational development within a lot of private businesses. I sit on the advisory board for the State of Oregon Sustainability Committee. I've been part of this committee since its inception. I also sat on the Climate Action Plan steering committee for 4 years as well. So deeply involved in the community in as many ways as I can be. I have an 11-year-old and I'm trying to make sure that her future is the best that it can be with the generation that we have at our hands right now. So that's mostly what I don't think I missed anything. Oh, and I currently sit as vice chair for this committee.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Neil Bonsgard, present. I currently sit as the chair of the ECC and have been a member since, or I think all of us have been members since we began 2 years ago. And I like to think of my role in the community as trying to accelerate clean technology and push forward smart climate and community building solutions. In my day job, I work at the Environmental Center, just a hop, skip, and a jump that way. And also I'm a middle school cross-country coach as a fun job. And as chair, I participate in a number of the working groups, but largely participate kind of externally in bringing a lot of the conversations that we have here to city council, or in kind of representing the group in other conversations to other groups. Yeah. Oh, and I, in this group also, and from my background, have a lot of transportation electrification experience and building decarbonization work that we've worked on here has been some of the areas that I've focused on. Rory.
Hello, my name is Rory Isbell. I'm also here today.
Thank you, check.
Let's see. My background. I'm an attorney. In my day job, I work for Central Oregon Land Watch, a local land use and environmental advocacy organization. But I sort of sit on this committee totally in my individual personal capacity. Most of my work is on rural issues in that day job, but I like the opportunity to serve on this committee to think about more urban city issues that the city is working on. I have 2 young daughters at home, 3 and 1, so I resonated with what Serena said over there, a reason to care about the climate. Let's see, I also volunteer on the Board of Governors for the Oregon Citizens Utility Board, which is a utility ratepayers advocacy organization that makes sure that utility customers across the state are getting the best bang for their buck, I guess, and not being saddled with uneconomic investments from our investor-owned utilities. Let's see, committees. I also have a bit of a background in transportation policy. I followed the city's transportation plan update pretty closely a few years ago, and in graduate school, my thesis research was on transportation climate policy. So I've kind of worked in some of those related subgroups on this committee. More recently, I've been involved in this natural gas subcommittee that is an agenda item related to some of that work today. Yeah, happy to be here and meet you.
Yeah, why don't you all go ahead, and then we have 3 committee members joining virtually that we'll jump to after that. But
Well, I'm Lauren Fraser. It's really nice to be here and meet everyone. In my day job, I guess I should say, like, I started working in climate a couple of years ago, first with Rewiring America, which is a national nonprofit focused on electrification. Did a lot of work on the Inflation Reduction Act policy, especially around home electrification there, and then advocacy with that. And then last year, started a company with a few other people that is really focused on working with companies to help their employees decarbonize at home. And what else can I say? I have 2 young kids, 2 daughters, preschool and middle school and elementary school. So very motivated to help them have a good future. And just really excited to get more involved in community.
thanks, Lauren. Oh, and your name tag is rotated.
Oh, thanks.
It's not for you to remember your name. Yeah.
Hi, it's Smitha Mehta. I've been living in Bend for 4.5 years. Let's see, I have a family, and my husband is a lawyer, and I have 2 kids in middle school and high school. So I care about their future as well. And in my day job, I work for the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. I focus more on water quality issues, but just interested in environment all around, and I've been working in environmental issues for 15 years or so.
Awesome. Welcome. Both of you. We're really, really excited to have you join the group. And we, yeah, it's gonna be fun. So I think online I see our 3 other committee members. So Kirsty, do you want to go next? And if I don't, yes, it looks like you're unmuted. So
hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I'm Kirsty Goodwin. I have a 12-week-old son I'm currently feeding, so I'm going to keep my video off for the moment. It's great to be back. I'm just coming off of my leave. See, I've been on the committee from the beginning. I currently work at Bethlehem Inn. I have a lot of experience in transportation work as well, and a lot of different environmental issues. I worked on the Home Energy Score Committee last year with the ECC. It's nice to be back.
And Kelly, do you want to go next?
Hi all, sorry, I'm going to be a bit slow this morning. I have my camera off as I'm traveling in Taiwan, and I've woken up about 15 minutes ago, so I'm a little bit slow. I work in supply chain manufacturing and a bit of circularity, and my background is more in waste reduction and management. And I've been in Bend for about 5 years.
Thanks so much, Kelly, and good luck staying awake. It's 3 o'clock.
It is, but I fly home today, so I'm very excited and excited to be here as well. Thank you.
Start to a good day. All right, and then last but not least, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. It says that the video is not allowed by the host. I don't know if anyone there, because I actually am happy to turn the camera on if I can. Sorry, I have to be in Portland today. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has the option, but I'll just talk without that. And
be good now.
It'll let me know. Okay, great. Now it did. So I'm Mark Buckley, economist with Echo Northwest. I guess I've been on the committee since its start. I've been in Bend for 5 years. My day job focuses on, let's say, economic analysis for natural resource management involving water, forest, climate. I'm also on the board of Oregon Business for Climate and a couple other nonprofits. And I am the committee's liaison to the utility public advisory group. So focused on water resources, stormwater, water supply, wastewater, things.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark, and everybody for joining. So we are fully present for our main members, and then I'm looking at the list. It doesn't look like either of our ex officios, Sasha or Ann, are here, but everyone else is. So welcome to new committee members. And we're excited to get rolling. And it's also great that thank you for the selection committee to be able to do that so we can have kind of a seamless jump in. I know it's end of the year is challenging time frame to get everything done. There's a lot that needed to be done, but really appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and that food's here. We'll go ahead and start with the approval of minutes. If there will, general process is we'll open things for discussion first. It's kind of our modified group rules. We'll open things for discussion first and then do motions and votes, and you can abstain if you weren't a part of it. Does anybody have any notes on the minutes or comments on the minutes? Not hearing any. Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Good, Cassie's writing it down. I'll second. And then all in favor? Great, so that's Kelly, Mark, Rory, Neil, Serena, Cubby, and opposed. There's not any, and then abstaining, I'm assuming, are the three that weren't at the last meeting. Great, wonderful. Kersey, Smenta, and Lauren. Okay, so we'll move to public comment. There's nobody present or online. If you're watching the YouTube video, we'll invite you to join the next meeting. You just have to follow the Zoom link on the ECC page to be able to make public comment. And then staff updates.
Okay, so just a couple of exciting updates. The first is that we had the second reading. We had the second reading of the home energy score ordinance on December 21st. So that went through without really any discussion, which is common for second readings. So that means that decision approving the home energy score is officially done, and we're delaying program implementation until July 1st. So that's when people will actually be required to have the scores. And in the meantime, we're doing a lot of work to kind of get the program actually stood up.
Yay.
The second update is, of course, that we're welcoming our new committee members. So welcome again, Lauren and Smita. And we're super excited you're our first new committee member. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
First opportunity to change things up. And another great update is that when we were doing the council actually directed staff. So I know that this group had talked about potentially wanting to add committee members, and the council actually kind of came to that conclusion on their own when we were kind of doing interviews and just as they were thinking about different committee structures. So they have directed us to expand the committee by up to 2 members. So the committee will now be 11 members. They would like to pull from the last interview round that we did to appoint those additional 2 positions. And we should be able to, we're on track to get that requires an ordinance and update to amend the code, but we're on track to get that done by February 1st. And so I think if it all goes smoothly, we could have those 2 new committee members by the next meeting actually. And the code was written up to 11 members. So that means that if it doesn't have to be 11 members. So if in the future, we just don't have, if the council decides that the applicants that they don't have enough to fill 11, that doesn't necessarily have to be 11, but we have the ability to have that many. But from the last interview round, there were a lot of great candidates. It was pretty competitive and there were a lot of great candidates. So they did have 2 additional people who they would like to appoint. So that's an exciting change as well. Any questions about those updates?
Will the 2 new members still be able to make the same meeting time? I'm guessing, is that one of the questions that's being kind of.
Yeah, we just kind of put it out there as this is the meeting time. And so no one raised any concerns with that.
Are there any, I guess this will probably be more for discussion at some point, but just changes to the committee structure, but it becoming even bigger, like the subgroups we've talked about, kind of having them be more permanent subgroups. So I just want to kind of raise that as we increase the size and the time is the same. I think it's just each person's involvement kind of gets a little reduced in terms of the full meeting at least, but if we can have more permanent working groups, I think that's a good balance.
And I think that that's in some of our future meeting plans to do some group work and
we'll talk about it at the agenda review at the end, but we're planning on holding a fairly significant chunk of time at our next meeting to talk about work planning, which would include both how we want to tackle the things that we know we need to tackle over the next, this year. And then as part of it, it'll be committee process stuff if we want to establish those types of things. So that'll be a big discussion in February.
Do we, with council turnover, Barb is still on council. Do we know if we have the same council?
So they
liaison?
update committee liaison assignments. So it could be Barb, it could be somebody else.
Okay. But when does that happen?
Probably in the next week or something, right?
Okay.
2 weeks. I would think before the February meeting.
Yeah.
This is kind of a weird in between time.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the date is they're doing that, but soon, this first quarter.
Great.
Yeah, good question.
Okay.
Any other questions on updates? Okay,
think
then
so.
I think that's all from me.
So our next agenda item is the system development charge methodology working group introduction.
And where I think from, I tested this one. I'm not sure it's as loud, but I think you can hear it online. Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Sarah Hudson. I'm a senior management analyst in the city manager's office. I'm also project manager for our system development charge methodology update that's just began. And I'm here today to see if we could get a member of your group to participate in kind of this stakeholder engagement that will be happening over the next few months, beginning in February. At least 3 meetings, maybe up to 5, once a month, couple-hour meetings each month. But just to take a step back and give a little more context of what this is. So system development charges are fees that are assessed at the time of new construction or some types of redevelopment when building permits are issued. It's a really big revenue source in the city. And the money that is collected is used toward capacity enhancing capital projects. So it's very narrow what these fees can be used for. We are looking to update our transportation and water SDC methodologies and also look at wastewater. We want to bring all of these into alignment. So we were a bit overdue for updating our transportation system development charges. The transportation system plan was updated in 2020. We usually like to have SDC methodology updates follow those kind of master plan updates so that they're tethered together. But we realize that it's better to have this whole discussion kind of holistically, look at it at once. We're looking at the whole thing, which is why we're looking at water and wastewater as well. So as part of this work, we're looking at updating the project list. So projects that are even eligible to receive these funds. We're also looking at kind of aligning the implementation structures between these charges. Right now, it's a pretty cumbersome process. We want to bring some efficiency in that. And there's also policy related implications. So we have exemptions for affordable housing, for childcare development. We're also looking at kind of a tiering that we do on the parks side. So the city collects parks SDCs for them on behalf of them, kind of the administrative side. And they and their implementation structure assess so that like by square footage, so that larger buildings are assessed a larger fee. We don't currently do that. That's what we're looking at. So it's kind of looking at some policy related items, some administrative items, but we really want to convene a stakeholder group so that we get all those inputs and kind of, evaluate all these things at once. So the stakeholder group is comprised of a lot of the development community representing different types of development. We have OSU Cascades coming to the table, Ben Carson and Rec, ODOT, the county. So it's a really kind of a diverse stakeholder group. I think it would really benefit from the involvement of this group as well. So that is why I'm here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So folks have questions, or I have one question if folks want to think of other questions. Does this happen on a regular? You said it was kind of overdue, and it's sometimes following TSP updates, you'll do a SDC process, but is there like a regular basis that this is done, or is this by direction of council or staff recommendation? What's the motivation for that?
Yeah, so really, I think in an ideal sense, it should happen about every 5 years or so that we kind of take a look. And yeah, with the transportation system plan updated in 2020, and then our water system master plan updated in 2021, that kind of prompted, okay, let's go back and do this.
Gotcha.
So,
Great.
that's kind of the order.
And there's quite a lot of, I think a lot of opportunity for how this can kind of like be related to our climate work, like the tiered SDC structure, for example, that she mentioned. There's a lot of advantages to it, but that was something that was actually discussed when we were putting the climate action plan together, because we had that strategy about encouraging smaller housing sizes. So in a way, this kind of like, there's a little bit of an incentive to have a smaller house if the SDC is lower, if it's tied to square footage. There's different discussions you can have about how SDCs can promote certain alternative transportation projects. So there really is, there's kind of a lot of potential crossovers depending on the decisions that are made. So, and I have the dates on the screen now. Sarah's very organized and already has the next 5 months of dates and times planned out. So you guys can kind of take that into account. And is it like, should we just have one liaison, like as far as like?
I think so, maybe like a primary and then someone, if there's a scheduling conflict, just so that there's that representation there, but.
Quick question. So aside from those meetings that you've laid out, what other sort of work or commitment would you expect from the liaison? Like any background reading or outside of those meetings type stuff?
That's a good question. At this point, it's not anticipated that it would be outside that time. I'd imagine that leading up to the meeting, we'll hopefully lay out agenda so that people can kind of come in primed with what that meeting will be talking about, but nothing that would require, I think, outside homework.
I'll say that, so the last time we did it, we had a consultant. It's been a while. I'd say 7, 8 years ago, and we've kind of chipped away, like council has made policy decisions for policy objectives to reduce STC, childcare, various, city attorney. Sorry. And the lawyers like, oh, we always like the policy reasons, but we get a little nervous because it's something of a house of cards if you chip away at things, because we have STC project lists to build projects that we all want, but it's a balloon. If somebody doesn't pay STCs, somebody else has to pay more. So, and the methodology has state statutes that have ways that you have to fund projects. So there are technical, we have consultants that help us with the technical piece, that if you're going to take something out, it all still has to work to fund the projects that the community, FIKE, PED, all of them, we want to fund them. And we have a big project list that comes out of the TSP. So I would say you do have to understand when you take something out, how do you fill it? How does it all work together? So there were a lot, as I recall in the past, it was a little technical and document driven to get to the recommended package to reach our policy objectives. And that got technical, right? I remember like glassing over a little and thinking, I need to pay attention to this because it actually matters. Math isn't necessarily my forte, and I have to always remember that I have to listen to the math. So if you like that, this would be your committee as well, not just the policy, but the math comes into play.
Mary, you just made me think of another question that may be for you, Sarah, or you, Mary. I know that redoing some of the state statute around SDCs has been discussed as something the legislature might look at. So this is kind of a crystal ball question, but has the city considered perhaps waiting to see if anything like that happens in this legislative session?
That's a good question.
So we're tracking it closely. The consultant that we have on board helped do the SDC report at the state level. Right now, it's just kind of findings. It doesn't seem like there's any formal things that will be happening legislatively, but we're keeping an eye on it. So yes, we really are making sure that is tethered.
Yeah. Session adjourns at the end of June, and that's when your process here is slated to end. So
We'll have to just jump in.
right.
Do you need a response right now?
Does anyone know, do we have potential
I'm-
interest?
I'm definitely
It'd just
interested.
be good to know if like, yeah, we at least have somebody interested, or if we have, and if we have multiple, that'd be good to know too.
I'm also interested. My background runs a little bit to understanding some of how this works, but I'm also super busy with other stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not
We can,
totally chomping at the bit here.
yeah, we can collaborate. Yeah. Yeah, online people interested.
Thanks, Cubby.
And I think there's, if there are topics that come up or ideas from the, like, because we will be bringing ideas from the committee. So if there's opportunity for us to have conversation, either as a large group or individually, if we might be able to have those, we can bring those to the group. So we'll have opportunities to be.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna recommend. If there's multiple people interested, we could do it that way.
Yeah,
Is there anyone online that-
I didn't see any chiming.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully we can all collaborate on what those recommendations are and then just show up and participate. Cool, great.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
joining.
Sarah. We were
I'll-
gonna do sandwiches next, just so.
Oh. Great, we're gonna do a lunch break. Or early morning or late night breakfast break, just depending on where you're at.
Online people, oh, sorry. We'll be back in a few minutes, online people. Thank you.
And if you're eating or not talking, you can kind of lift your mic up, but just don't forget to put it back. So welcome back from quick lunch break. We're gonna jump into our next agenda item, which is the chair and vice chair elections. It's been another year, and we do this every January. So just a quick overview of the process that we're gonna go through. We opened nominations via email, self-nominations via email. We talked about the roles and kind of the process at the last meeting. And so we have currently one nominee for the chair and one nominee for the vice chair, but we'll do the chair election first. And there will be an opportunity if anybody else wants to nominate themselves. And then we will vote on the members one person at a time. And then also with the rules, as soon as the election is done and the person or people are elected, then they take their role immediately. That's my memory of the process. Okay, so we'll start with the chair. During the email process, there was one nomination, which was myself. I'd be happy to serve another year as chair, but am open or have been open. So if there's other further nominations for chair, either in person or virtually, and I can't see the virtual screen anymore. So not hearing any. We're hearing only one nomination. The new nominations are closed for chair role. Can I get, does that count as a nomination since it happened online? Can I just get a second?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a second to nominate Neil Bonsgard, myself, as the new chair?
I'll second.
Seconded by Covey. Any discussion?
Yeah, Neil, you've done really great the last over a year because we sort of took a while to get a chair, and I'm very supportive of you continuing. You're doing a great job leading this committee and setting agendas and all the background work. I know it's a lot, so thank you, and thank you for setting up to continue doing it.
It's actually been over 2 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
It is.
First meeting was January 6th of
Year.
Any further discussion? Okay, great. All in favor? And then, so everybody present here and then
And we have
online.
all 3 hands
Okay.
raised online too. Yeah, there we go.
Motion carried with all members. Thank you.
Congrats.
New chair is our old chair.
Yeah. Well, so in my new role, I'm going to start with the election of the vice chair. So during the email process, we received one nomination from Covey Choksey. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. Yeah, I can share a little bit. So I already put in the email that I really enjoyed being a part of the committee over the last 2 years. I really enjoyed being an active member of many of the working groups and subcommittees as well. So I'm looking forward to kind of taking the next step and playing more of a leadership role as vice chair. And I'm excited at the opportunity to be able to do so. And I just want to share, I missed sharing this as part of the intro, but one of the things I'm really excited about that I've mentioned in past meetings is the culture shift potential. And so I've always kind of had that lens for a lot of the work that the ECC does and prioritizing our actions that especially create a culture shift in the community. So I wanted to share that. And also I believe, I don't know if this has changed with the new members, but at least to my knowledge, I'm the only renter on the committee as well. So I think I at least can bring some of the perspective of not being a homeowner currently, or at least the difficulty of potentially being a homeowner in the future as well. So I wanted to share that as well. I also wanted to disclose, I mentioned this at the start of the meeting, that I just officially accepted a position, part-time position as Rethink Waste Program Coordinator at the Environmental Center. And so I just want to disclose that to the full committee for consideration as well, make sure that's something that can be considered and weighed. And if there are any concerns, especially, I think I've already discussed this with Cassie and got Mary's input as well in terms of recusing myself if there's ever any potential for conflict of interest or even appearance of conflict of interest in any matters. I'm happy to recuse myself in that way. But if there's still any concerns in terms of optics, and if someone else is interested, I'm also happy to consider that and potentially step aside from vice chair role. So I'm open to any other folks who are interested in the role as well.
Great. So thanks for your nomination, being willing to step up. Are there any other further nominations for the vice chair role? Okay. Only hearing one nomination. The nominations are now closed. Can I get a second motion, or can I have a second motion to nominate Covey as the new vice chair?
I motion.
Second from Serena, thanks. Any discussion?
Well, since I chimed in. Thank you for stepping up to take on this role. And I appreciate you kind of disclosing that potential for perception of conflict or anything. To me, that speaks to like how seriously you take the work, and you know how seriously you want this committee to do good work that's unimpeded by procedural or any issues. And you know, I know you're passionate about this committee getting things done, and that's a big reason why I support you being our vice chair, because I know you're going to keep that passion alive. So thank you for you as vice chair.
Not hearing any other discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Or raise your Zoom hand. Yeah.
All three online as well.
Great. Motion carries. Congratulations and welcome, Co-Chair Covey. Awesome. Well, that was great. I think we're, as Serena mentioned, we have been happy to serve in this role for the last 2 years, but think that it's also really helpful to see different people in different roles. And I think it's also great. Serena, it's been great working with you, and I think it'll be great to still have you be on the committee for the next 2 years, not in the co-chair role. So then I think your involvement changes when you are able to participate in a different way. So we're into mixing things up, yeah, looking forward to it.
And I just want to take the opportunity to also just thank Serena for being the vice chair for the last 2 years as well. So thanks for your service and the leadership you played there. I know you were basically part of every working group that existed. It seemed like we were always in the same working groups. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we're going to jump into our council goal input finalization, which we had work from committee members and Cassie to get that put together from previous conversation. And this meeting timing is wonderful this year because we have this extra meeting to talk about this and finalize this, so then we can submit it. And then also I'll be going in person on next Thursday to share highlights from our recommendations as well.
And so just to kind of provide some context, especially for the new committee members. So we just had the last election, we had a council election. And so that happens every 2 years. And so every 2 years, our counselors change by a couple of people. And so for the city, we work off of a 2-year goal setting process, and we align that with the new counselors. So when the new counselors come in, they just took office last week, and then they are spending the rest of this month. It's kind of a process that takes a few months, but primarily they're coming up with their council goals for the next biennium kind of right now. And so these will be council goals that go into effect July 1st of this year through June 30th, 2025. Council goals are a pretty big deal because they really, they really do set the city's priorities. And kind of together with that, they direct where a lot of the discretionary funding goes. And so during the council goal setting process, all advisory committees have an opportunity to provide input directly to the council to say, this is what we would like you to include in your goals. So you can see the goals from the ones we're working under right now are on that, in that frame thing behind you. So you can see there was actually like a whole environment and climate section, and that's where a lot of this committee's work kind of fell under that. It's not like if something's not in council goals, it doesn't mean that we can't work on it at all, but it does really kind of set the framing for like what the city is working on and prioritizing over the next 2 years. So the last couple of meetings at the end of the last year, this group with the help of a working group has kind of brainstormed and put some ideas out there. And then we haven't actually, there's a specific form, like a template form that we have to fill out and submit. And so what I have up here is we're trying to finalize these because they actually are due today. And the form asks specific questions. So what I've taken, so for the rest of the committee, what I've tried to do was take the discussion that we had, and we had kind of come up with 5 things, and I was working to put it into this form. So I sent it out as part of the meeting packet. I didn't receive any written input from anyone, but I think it would be good to just go through it really quick and just make sure that you guys are all good with kind of how this is. And this is a different form than we used 2 years ago. So the way we were thinking about it, like we were thinking about it in terms of the last form, and this form is a little bit different. And so I kind of had to pick and choose where I thought things fit best. But if you guys think it should, a certain section should fit somewhere else, like I'm totally open to that. So I'll just go through it really quick. And I know it's like never fun to like actually be wordsmithing or anything during a meeting, but as this is due today, like if you guys have edits that you feel strongly about, we will need to discuss them today. So just to step back, and Neil, I don't think during your presentation, you necessarily have to follow like this exact form either. So that's something to keep in mind. But so the questions that we have to fit everything in is, what are your advisory board's top 3 goals? That's usually like generally, not necessarily just for this biennium. And then what are your board's top priorities for the next 2 years? What is your advisory board's priority for the city council goals? And then are you already working on initiatives or plans that can help the council achieve these goals? And then describe practical steps to measure progress towards this goal. So for the first section, what are your advisory board's top 3 goals? I took these just, we had a section very similar to this in the last council goal input, and this was just very broad, which is basically stating that it's making sure the city and kind of helping the city achieve its climate action goals by guiding implementation of the CCAP, ensuring that the city uses an environmental lens, so kind of just that playing that broad environmental lens role. And then we had a statement in there about how like the ultimate goal of all of that is to improve quality of life for Bend residents. So those are the big picture goals. And then for the top priorities for the next 2 years, this is where I put the 5 goals that we talked about. And so we kind of went through and approved those. The changes we made from last month was that I reworded the one about transportation to be more kind of broad transportation focused. And I think that was the only major change. And then I'm just going to go through them so you can see how they all fit together and we can discuss them. So anyway, so that was those 5. This is kind of like the action items. The question, what is your advisory board's top priority for city council goal? I wasn't exactly sure how that was supposed to be super different from the committee's goals. So, and Mary, I'd welcome your feedback on this as well. Basically, I just was saying that the committee, their goals for the council goals are the same as their goals for themselves. And I just kind of justified the fact that because the CCAP doesn't have like a dedicated funding source, kind of why it's important to include it as part of council goals in order to make sure that we can continue making progress on it. And then making the case for like, because as part of the 5 goals, we kind of acknowledged that we felt that the committee felt there needs to be new and additional resources on the staffing front, and and just other resources front. And so I kind of justified that as well, like that there's currently less than an FTE kind of running the whole program, and that in order to achieve the goals, you know, it would be helpful to have more resources. So that's kind of how I broke that up. And then, oh yeah, and this section too. So the other thing we talked about last month is that the committee is interested in the council adopting a climate action resolution or a climate emergency declaration, but you kind of wanted to offer it to the council as a tool they could use. And so I put that in this paragraph, or in this section. I included a paragraph about how the committee recognizes that the council has way more, you know, a ton of priorities, very limited resources. And so as a way of kind of highlighting the importance of the climate work, that the council could use a climate emergency declaration as kind of a tool to like elevate the work. So you guys can let me know if you think that's like the right place to put that, because we didn't really know exactly how to do it. And then this next section is just acknowledging, is the advisory board already working on initiatives or plans? Of course we are, because we are working on implementing the CCAP. So I just kind of described that and kind of recaps some of our bigger initiatives that we completed last year, being the home energy score and the EV readiness plan, and some of the waste things that we're currently working on. And then for the practical steps to measure progress towards the goal, because we had discussed a lot in our, we've discussed a lot in the input to this, that the committee felt that we actually like are not showing progress or calculating progress that well. So I kind of took the opportunity to flag that as like another, as a need. So we do update our greenhouse gas emissions inventory right now. That's on a 5-year schedule. And like that, we think that we should be building out those better tracking mechanisms as part of a priority this biennium, which is reflected in the 5 strategies, but I kind of reinforced it here. So hopefully you guys read it as well. So that kind of all made sense as a recap. So I'll just open it up to discussion, I guess, if you guys have feedback. It might be helpful to start with kind of like bigger picture feedback. If you think any of the sections should be restructured, or we should be highlighting different things at different sections. If you feel like where I put the climate emergency declaration was an appropriate place to put that, or if you wanted to put that somewhere else.
Sure, I can start the discussion there. And I think all of this looks good, Cassie. Thanks for kind of reformatting it to the new form. I think the only section that feels a little, I don't know how, but that section, that what is your advisory board's top priority for city council goal? Like reading through that, I don't know. I guess reading through that, that's the one that kind of stood out to me, that I would like to maybe like see if the committee can get it more, take like the shape we wanted to for the top priority. And I think the specific part of it, so the first part of it, I think you're asking Mary as well, if that's a good way to put it, is the kind of the 5 objectives. This feels kind of like we want that to be the priority, is these 5 objectives, which I see your point, is I don't know what other better way to do that. But I just want to open that for a discussion. And then in terms of the climate emergency declaration, if you do go down just to the next, start of the next page. So I think the only thing I want to either add or maybe change with that line is adopting a climate emergency declaration during council goals to make sure that implementing the CCAP gets the resources and capacity it needs to be effective. I would also like to have a more stronger part to that, where it just is that to ensure that climate action is being prioritized, like as a city kind of like goal, or like it's one of the priorities of the city, is kind of like to reaffirm that the city really values taking climate action and making it one of their priorities for the next 2 years as a whole. And this is one step that could do that, which can also go along with additional resources and capacity. So those are the 2 things I just wanted to share in terms of personal feedback. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get that to you earlier.
I agree, there's a little awkwardness in the questions that you pointed out, Cassie, with was your budget board's top priority for council. Well, it's the same as our committee's priorities. And I think maybe one simple way to do that is to just upfront on that question, almost restate our number one top goal, which is assuring we reach our greenhouse gas reduction goals. So somehow blend that into that first sentence.
So it could be like, the top priority is making sure we're reaching our greenhouse gas reduction goals. We think the five priorities described above will help us get there.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Peggy, does that?
Yeah. I think I like that. And actually that brought to mind, I think it might be mentioned here somewhere else, but I think you mentioned that currently we're not, I don't know if the words you used, but it seemed like you were mentioning that we may not be completely on track right now to kind of reaffirm the urgency that's required. And that could be a priority to say the city has already agreed to reach these goals. Our committee is tasked with making sure we're doing that. And currently we're not like on track. We need more resources, capacity, attention, whatever it is to make sure we can reach that. So that could be a good way to tie it to Rory's suggestion of.
And I do state that it's at the bottom, kind of, it says,
Yeah.
Bend has actually seen an increase in emissions over the last 5 years.
I think if we could start with that line, maybe.
It's a little bit nuanced because what we'll learn at our inventory next week is that it has increased, but if you look at our projection moving forward, based on this new state policies, especially related to renewable electricity, we do hit our 40% reduction goal, but there's like a lot of caveats in that's making some assumptions that may or may not be true. And we come very close to our 70% goal, but not quite.
Okay.
So I just feel like when you make a statement like we are not on track, there's just, I don't know, I get a little bit nervous when if we were to dig into that, there's just a lot more to it that if we dig into it, I want to be able to like state those. But it's definitely true is that we have seen an increase over the last 5 years.
Okay, so maybe just putting that sentence, I think, still kind of shows that this needs more prioritization over the next few years, or continued prioritization, I guess.
Okay. I'll put these in bullets so that I can capture it and not try to come up with good sentences right now.
while you're doing that, I want to open the floor to our online folks if you have comments or feedback on the council goals document. Not seeing any, but if you do, oh, Mark, here it is, video on, perfect.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I don't have any strong comments.
I know this is hard, and we're doing it today, and you're trying to finalize it. That part of the goal setting council is actually taking 6 goals and shrinking it down to 4. And then within those 4, there's specific, like the STC methodology. Council does better with programs. And then that leads to the budget development and staff FTEs.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, this council thinks that climate change is important, but to translate that into FTEs, they do better with programs. And so, for example, the parking manager is getting another person to regulate parking in the city because council wants to see more, less cars, more regulated parking. So regulating parking is seen as a program to get people using cars better, reducing cars driving around. So that gets a body.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle with just the concept that this is important, give us resources. Especially we're being told by the city manager that you're not getting FTEs. We're heading into tighter, the property taxes are things, money's not coming in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want an FTE, you have to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just encourage you to think about and that's the update to the climate action plan is going to give you potentially action items that then need bodies to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better way to go to council for resources. Like you don't need to convince them of the importance. They're there.
Mm-hmm.
But what do they do with that importance? That's part of your job, is to give them actions that they then need people to do?
Well, I think Mary, the 5 that are up on the screen was the attempt to do that. And the discussion was like to do a real update and all, but at the same time be carrying forward the existing CCAP and also to improve our tracking and reporting. Like we could call that a tracking and reporting program that's not yet established. So the discussion was that even to do these things, to update the CCAP, but to continue to maintain the existing capacity that we have and to do tracking and reporting while continuing to maintain existing capacity that we have, like those alone need new people. Like we can't
need new-
really, yeah.
So you're asking for, so then I'd be very specific to do those items that are on our work plan. We need another FTE, or like I'd be very specific with them, what is needed in the department to work with Cassie.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because then we talked like for another one of the 5 was that for the electric vehicle readiness plan.
Yeah.
That needs maybe not an entire FTE, but that needs FTE capacity in the transportation and mobility department. So we could call that one out separately.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, and that one's on the table and clearly supported.
Yeah.
And needed in the city.
And if I could just add to that, I really like that framing of it, because I think the one thing I'm trying to, again, like our task is to implement the community climate action plan. It has these 42 actions. And I still don't know what the timeline is to like try and get all those 42 done. But however many we've done so far and like how many we should be doing, like if capacity, like if we're not implementing all the actions within that time frame and we're not on track to meet the kind of implementation deadline, then I think we should start looking at capacity, and I think having additional committee members is going to be helpful. Having additional capacity on the staff side would be helpful. I think those are kind of the things we've discussed as a committee previously about what are those restraints that are, or constraints that are keeping us from implementing more of these actions in the next, let's say, 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
I like
discussion
that
we need to have with
connection.
council. In the next 2 years, if you want us to be implementing, this is what we need.
So I think that should be one of our priorities is increasing that capacity with staff and committee change. Yeah.
I need to think about how to word this. Okay, so maybe we can, is there support then for kind of, I guess, elaborating in this, the top priority for city council goals, like the changes we've talked about, and then kind of being more specific about the FTE and what they're being deployed for instead of just kind of general. And this feels like a good place to put that.
Yeah, because we do ask, I mean, the narrative already does talk about resources and capacity. But
yeah, it could just be added here. It just says
Yeah.
achieving the above goals will require more staff in order to effectively do
Yeah.
it.
and I know that's something that we all have mentioned and asked for. So when you were writing this up, well, yeah, that's something that we were asking for. The one other area that I thought that I saw, but didn't in further reading, was in the work that we have accomplished or the work that we're moving forward with, making sure that that goal of the continued involvement in state policies to improve building performance, that is like through the rebuilding task force, there will be a large package, a resilient buildings package that will be in this cycle. And so I think it's important to flag that as an opportunity. It's not a big body of work for us as a committee, but it is a big opportunity to have that be included in council's policy goals with the lobbyist.
So you think it can stay in this section about initiatives you're already working on?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll add a bullet there. About For the climate emergency declaration, I can't even remember exactly what your feedback was on that, Covey. Can you remind me?
Well, I think it just mentioned it was a additional. Yeah, so it just says make sure implementing CCAP gets the resources and capacity needs to be effective, which just doesn't seem like a very. I mean, that's like the bare minimum, I guess, or to just implement the work. But I guess also there is that. We talked about it before about that symbolic piece of like showing that the city is willing to declare this a climate emergency at the city level. So I think there's like that, yeah, to make sure that it's like shown as a priority. And it's an opportunity for council to then connect that with those additional resources and things, like kind of like make it one package, I guess, as part of their priorities. I almost see this as like a wrapper for some of the other things we're asking for as well. If the committee agrees with that kind of framing, yes.
Is that what other people think about that?
Yeah.
Rory was going like this.
And if there's concerns, we can keep it
I
separate.
think it's fine. Glad it's in there. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, so I think everyone's comfortable with, is everyone comfortable with the 3 goals? And then we kind of discussed and agreed upon these 5 priorities at the December meeting. I know that new committee members, this is probably the first time you're seeing them. Do those still look good to everybody?
Yeah.
And then, so we've kind of most of the changes are going to come in kind of reframing the top priority for the city council goal, and then adding the building decarbonization policy into the current initiatives. And then the last one, does anyone have any thoughts? This is another one that was like a little bit tricky. Describe practical steps to measure progress towards the goal. So what I said in there is that we do greenhouse gas emissions inventories every couple of years. That's something that, again, like we only really have capacity to do every couple of years. If we had, other cities do it every year, but they'll have people dedicated to doing that. So then I said the city should establish better mechanisms of tracking progress metrics for individual climate action strategies in order to better understand at a finer scale where progress is being made and where opportunities exist.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, we have very, very high level every couple of years updates, but what does that do for us on a day-to-day or month-to-month or quarterly basis to understand how we're impacting? And there's some things that might not be able to track as easily or as regular, but just being able to better understand what that looks like is hugely important, not only for our committee, but how we're representing ourselves to the community and how the community is seeing, this take place.
Okay, there's some examples of metrics that you want to add in here. I think that's just the thing, is like adding a little more clarity to what those metrics and those metrics are.
I think for council goal input, it's just so high level that like when they're reading this, like they don't know what we are tracking versus not right now. So I think for this one, in this context, it may be better to keep it broader.
I'll just kind of piggyback on that maybe is when I was reading this, I think there's like 2 ways to kind of measure progress towards the goals. There's the goal of the greenhouse gas emissions, but then there's also the goal of all these 42 actions. And I wonder if, I know you mentioned that earlier somewhere in the document too, but I wonder if there's a quick line that can be added about. That's something else. I think you mentioned having like more of a tracker where all those actions lie kind of available. If that's something that could also be another way to measure that progress in terms of as we continue working for next years.
So it says the city should establish better mechanisms of tracking progress metrics for individual climate action strategies. Is it something different than that?
So I still read that as a progress metric as in the impact of emissions impact of those strategies. Would it also report on where those actions lie, like started or discussing or
Yeah, that's how I read it. at a finer scale, kind of being like in general, the strategy in itself. Is it something I'm working on? Is it something that's completed? What is, and then the impact and result of that once it's been.
I think you're
That's
right, as
how-
I finish reading the rest
that's
of
how I
this,
read it.
I think it's fine.
Okay, any other comments? Let me look at the virtual. Can you see them? Okay, then, so if we're good like this, since it is due today, unfortunately, you won't be able to review the final verbiage.
We trust you.
Okay, thank
I
you.
trust you.
Neil, do you feel like you have what you need to do the presentation next week, or do you have anything you want to ask the committee as far as direction for that?
I think so, unless people have specific direction.
And it's super quick. It's like 2 to 3 minutes,
Yeah.
probably 2 minutes.
I'm planning on just pulling
I mean,
from this a
just think
little
about the-
preamble.
Think about the one thing we want to get across to them in a
Uh-huh.
2-minute period of time, you know? What will they be able to take away
Yep.
based on everything else that they're gonna hear that day?
What is
Yep.
our top like ask? Is it the one FTE? Is it kind of like supporting all these
That's a good-
5 goals and
Yeah.
5 things that we're talking about as well, but in terms of an ask, because that we can do independently of that, then like giving us something.
I think from this, we can kind of summarize very quickly the importance of climate action, doing it quickly,
Yeah.
taking this seriously as a committee. We need more capacity. We're doing that by increasing our, committee. We're also asking for that support for additional staff capacity to help push projects through.
You might have 5 minutes, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a
Okay.
good thing that I was keeping in mind. What's the
Yeah.
one takeaway? Even though there's a lot more things to say.
The first of the 5 under the second question, there's a little typo, you have to put plan under community climate action.
Thank you. I have a lot of typos frequently, so I always welcome those types of feedback. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you all for the input on this and for the working group that met a few times to work on this. That was hugely helpful as well. It's nice to have a little bit more time. So for the new committee members, last time they did it, it was like the committee had like 2 meetings like all together. And so it was like really a scramble to kind of come up with something coherent, and they
And
did a
all
great
virtual.
job, but it
Yeah.
is nice to, and all virtual. Yeah. It is nice to have a little bit more space. Okay, then I think we can, we're done with this agenda item then.
So we're going to jump into our last kind of main agenda item, which Rory will be leading. And this is the natural gas pipeline discussion, which you all should have gotten the memo that Rory sent out in the meeting materials. And I haven't been doing this, but in general, I try to mention if something is more of an info item, if it's more discussion, or if it's something that we actually need to take action on. And I believe this is something that's timely enough that we're hoping to be able to talk about it and make a decision in just a couple of minutes, right?
Yes.
Perfect, great. And not just a couple of minutes. We have more time than that, but.
Well, thanks, Neil. Yeah, so this is perhaps a little outside the normal scope of this committee, but I had been hearing about it for a couple months and thought it was worth bringing to the committee's attention. So I brought it up last meeting, and then did a little basic research, worked with Cassie, worked at this memo. I'll start by just describing what this is. There's an existing pipeline that starts in Canada, runs through Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and California, and it carries natural gas from Canada, through those states. And it happens to run through Bend city limits on the east side of town. There's a project proposal right now that's being reviewed by the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to expand the capacity of that pipeline, that gas pipeline. looked at the environmental impact statement, sort of a NEPA review document associated with this project, to pull out some basic information, which is what the bullet points in the memo here are. Again, it's an expansion of that fossil fuel pipeline. It would expand the system by 150 million standard cubic feet per day. It's included in the project, is upgrading 3 compressor stations, one of which is located in Oregon. The other 2 are in Washington. And then there's some, I jumped to the climate impact section in this EIS of this project, which is what most of the additional information in here gives you. The third bullet point here talks about which entities have subscribed to this added capacity, one of which is Cascade Natural Gas, which is the primary gas supplier in our region here and in the city of Bend. So they are subscribed for 20,000 decatherms per day, I think is the unit there. A couple different types of emissions. There's construction emissions from actually doing the work, which are small, but really I think the bigger impact for us to think about are the downstream emissions. The impact of using this expanded natural gas capacity that this project proposes. So that first bullet point on the second page, let's see, the project could potentially increase emissions in Oregon by 1.3% based on 2020 levels. So on one hand, you might think 1%, not huge, but if we're talking about the whole state, that's, I think that is fairly significant. And then I appreciate the EIS, it compares to climate goals that the states, these 3 states have, 4 states. And so that second bullet point on the second page, state of Oregon has goals to reduce emissions by 75% of 1990 levels by 2050. So the project's operational emission and reasonably foreseeable downstream subscribed emissions would constitute 2.1% of that reduction goal. So basically, if this project were to be approved in this expansion, we'd have to make up 2% of the progress toward that goal somewhere else. That's the way I'm thinking about it. And then, there's measures out there for the social cost of carbon. The EIS gives some information on that. I realize in this quote here, it's that third number of the 3 that are listed that applies to Oregon. How the quote came out, it doesn't identify Oregon. So, but that's $4 billion social cost for Oregon. And the project total is $8.8 billion in 2020 social costs of carbon is what the EIS estimates. So, like I mentioned, I've heard about this project for a few months. It's been on review for a while. What's happened during that review is the attorneys general of the 3 West Coast states, they sort of got together and became a party in the first review of this project in opposition. So, next in this memo, I just pulled from their introduction to their interview at FERC. And they talk about how this project is kind of antithetical towards all 3 states' greenhouse gas reduction goals. Then what's not on the memo here, but I'll just take a minute to share is after, Cassie and I put this memo together, I had a good call with the executive director of the Citizens Utility Board of Oregon. I mentioned the intro that I serve on their board. So finally got on the phone with Bob Jenks, his name is. And again, the CUB kind of reviews energy infrastructure projects in the state of Oregon to look out for ratepayers, for paying their utility bills. So on one hand, this is kind of a federal project, which isn't totally the wheelhouse, but it gave me some more information that I think is worth sharing, specifically about Cascade Natural Gas. He mentioned that this project is not in what's called their integrated resource plan. So every few years, the utility has to go to our state's public utility commission and present them a plan of where their energy resources are coming from, why they need them, how they're going to pay for them. That's kind of the justification around the state utility rates. So Bob mentioned, he pointed out that this isn't in their IRP or integrated resource plan. So Bob and the CUB have a concern that this could be what they call a stranded asset for customers. We all know that the trend kind of in Oregon and also nationwide, the came out of the Inflation Reduction Act is to move towards electrification, right? To start working towards reducing our natural gas use. So there's a concern that, by at least for Cascade Natural Gas and their service area, which includes Bend, by putting this on their books, like this cost that they have to pay for that, which is through rates. So you're putting that cost on customers, whereas the trend is to minimize natural gas and hopefully reduce it in the future because of its emissions impact. So I think that's a good thing to know as we think about this. The very end of the memo, I kind of remind us why I brought this to our attention. On one hand, it goes through the city limits. So that's kind of unique, I think, and why this matters here. And there's an open record at FERC, so anyone can write in and share opinions, a comment on how they feel about this project. So considering our city's greenhouse gas reduction goals and the work of this committee, I'm hoping to have a discussion about potentially recommending the city to make a comment formally opposing this natural gas expansion project that runs through Bend.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And I know you had mentioned earlier as well that the Bend is uniquely situated because the pipeline itself doesn't go through many, or we might be the largest.
Yeah, I can't say for sure,
But-
other city jurisdictions.
Looking at the map, it's not going through many larger cities. Yeah, potential there.
I believe it's totally appropriate to create a recommendation based on everything that you mentioned here and the goals and things that we just talked through 2 minutes before that. I'm just giving my personal opinion right now. I'll let others speak.
Yeah, I guess my main question is, are there any downsides to this not going through or any benefits to this in terms of those reduced costs for current natural gas customers?
I don't think I can answer that with 100% confidence, but again, based on the conversation I've had with the Citizens Utility Board and their familiarity with how at least Cascade Natural Gas imposes costs on customers, there's no in their currently approved integrated resource plan, this project's not in there, so it's not a cost that they have planned for. Is how we can best answer that now.
And this would I don't know how this works, but this is to, I think in your memo you mentioned that this is mainly going to be used by folks in Canada and not, it's not increasing output and thereby reducing costs for subscribers right now.
So my understanding is the 3 entities that have subscribed to this added capacity, 2 of them are US companies, so Cascade Natural Gas and Intermountain Gas. And that third one, Tourmaline, I think is Canadian. So yes and no. It sounds like one of the entities is in Canada and the other 2 are here in the States.
And I'm also making a guess here, but I would assume if this had gone through an IRP process, that they would be saying that this could save ratepayer dollars. But that's on the assumption that we're growing our gas demand, which is antithetical to the goals of to any of our climate goals. And so I think that's the piece that is part of that discussion and part of that bet is if you are asking to not grow gas demand, then making additional investments become stranded assets and are more expensive. So that's why we don't want to be putting them in the ground.
I have a question as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll know this, maybe like one of the 2 of you, if it's not in their IRP, are they allowed to just go acquire things that aren't in their IRP? I know the whole IRP thing is really confusing, but like the way it's always kind of positioned is we figure out what resources we need and then we go acquire them. And so I'm sure they would say oh, we need it because demand is growing is probably what they would say. But if it's not in their IRP, do you know anything about how that works?
Yeah, I kind of have a similar question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. My guess is that it has something to do with, so Cascade Natural Gas isn't the sponsor of this project. Now, it says in this EIS that there's someone who's subscribed to some of the capacity, but as far as like the, I don't know, cost of this project itself, it might show up in their next IRP project.
Yeah, so it's kind of,
process.
they're like proactively obtaining
Yeah,
resources.
and I think that's often how it works, like the utility has to think on a bigger than 2-year timescale, which is
Yeah.
I think is the general IRP timescale. So they
Yeah,
have to work on stuff before that and then
okay.
go into the PUC and see what they say about the plan. That go forward. But I also, just transparency, I'm not an expert in the PUC and IRPs and how it works, so that's my best guess.
Yeah.
Question, Kathy.
I have a question. Will this project result in infrastructure changes to the current pipeline going through town?
So I don't believe the section of the pipeline that runs through that, I don't think it would require physical changes. I guess just like the pressure, the amount of gas thrown through it would increase. The physical changes that I understand are these 3 compressor stations that I mentioned, one of which is in Sherman County to the north of us here. So there is like construction plan for that
You
location.
won't need like a Bend City permit for any changes. that are
I don't
happening.
believe so, at least I didn't see any of that in the EIS.
Let me tell from the map. One of the lawyers in our office says that it mentioned to me that it's just outside the Bend city limits. So I guess I'm not entirely clear where the pipeline runs.
If it was in city limits, would they, because it's clearly close, would they need to do something
was-
if it wasn't like a change to our section?
Mary, I think it
Doesn't seem
runs
like
through
it
the
would.
Stevens Road tract, the former DSL
Oh,
property. So I guess it could be on the
It's
edge of the city limits, but inside the UGB is maybe a distinction there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it would, I'd have to look into the history of what kind of easement they have and, all of that.
Yeah,
That he thought it was outside the city limits, but
I see.
we haven't studied it. and We haven't been asked to look at it.
Right.
And do you know when the comment period ends?
so it's on an agenda, the FERC in mid-February. I think it's
Okay, so
February
there's a little
16th.
bit of time.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but no, I just asked because your request is for the mayor to write. And we actually changed our council rules so that the mayor can take positions that are consistent with council goals on legislation without going to the full council. We didn't put on any topic, so that one's a little bit of a gray area. I mean, this one, I think I know what all of council would think, but in general, like the mayor can't just take positions on behalf of the city. So that's just, you can go ahead with we can work out our process from our end, what the mayor, so I was just asking about the timing, if there was going to be a council meeting before the end of the comment period.
Thanks, Mary. I also was hoping we could check in on process, depending on what this
Yeah,
committee
depending on what you wanna
decides to do,
do.
what's the best process
Yeah.
to get, formal city opposition to this project.
Yeah, I was just gonna add procedurally, if we do pass this as a committee, it would still be reviewed by lawyers before the mayor's, before it gets to the mayor to see if it's even
Yeah.
able to weigh in on this or makes sense for it to weigh in.
I mean, Rory knows this as a lawyer and we're your lawyer versus the ECC. I've been fairly involved in NEPA processes and having read a lot of comments that just say, oh, we don't like that project, we tend to just not really look at those very much because they don't, NEPA is a procedural statute. It isn't substantive. I haven't looked at what the AGs have submitted, which are probably somewhat persuasive because they've got a bunch of lawyers who have looked at arguments as to why. So my other thought is to say, oh yeah, we, the city of Bend, agree with them, agree with the states that have come out in opposition for the reasons they've said. That might be at least something that is more legally persuasive than just saying we don't like, expansion of natural gas, which, that isn't one of their criteria, presumably, for disallowing it in an EIS. You look at alternatives, you look at environmental impacts, and that is a time-consuming process to figure out what are strong legal arguments. But hopefully they did that.
So, yeah, this is something I thought about, and I don't think there's time, and I wouldn't try to impose that amount of work on the
That's
city.
actually- I don't have that kind
There's
of
a
time.
month before this decision point, so, you know, but in considering that, what I am sort of, the idea I'm throwing out there is the sort of shorter symbolic thing, recognizing it might not have the same legal impact as the AG's brief to
Right.
intervene and oppose this project, but, you know, I think symbolic actions matter too. So.
And it helps that we could like, we'd have the AG thing to like align with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's, yeah, we oppose it and we agree with everything that they
Yeah.
raised.
Where,
kind
yeah,
of thing.
I talked to another attorney who's representing kind of environmental advocacy groups that are opposing this, and you know, one thing she recommended was like, oh, anyone who wants to oppose this should call up the attorneys at the state AG's office who are working on this and strategize with them.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to recommend that to the city on this time.
Couple things. I do think it carries a lot of weight that the AGs have weighed in. I think that's like really strong. Is there any? I guess I read that paragraph that's written there from the AGs, and I think that's really powerful. But they mentioned a couple things about it not serving like the public interest and then things like that. Are there other folks like the governors that would help add more weight, or is that kind of the same like the administration proposing it kind of already? And I guess I also don't know how PERC operates. Do they look at whether the local communities want something to go through, or is it only legal procedural reasons that they look at?
Yeah, I think Mary kind of just discussed that. You know, there are criteria in the law that govern whether FERC should approve or deny a project. So I think your latter was probably the official. But again, I think even symbolically, there's impact into doing this.
And
I guess the first question, the AG, I assume that the AGs are empowered to speak on behalf of the state when they take an action like that. But I will note, and there was even a piece on this in the press this morning, where I learned that our two state senators, or US senators, Merkley and Wyden, have formally come out in opposition to this project.
I was gonna say, I had a meeting with Wyden and a few other folks a couple weeks ago. And we had some conversations around these types of issues, not this one specifically, but like just to be more vocal and take action where we can and be a voice. And I was part of the committee when I was on this call, but I think wherever we can, where it makes sense is important.
last thing I just want to clarify, I feel like you mentioned something about mid-March, but you also mentioned mid-February, so I just want to make sure when the next decision meeting, I guess, was.
I believe it's mid-February,
Okay.
if it says March in here.
I believe so too.
Yeah, this
That's
says
why we wanted
mid-February,
to-
but I think in response to Mary's question, you mentioned, I think,
Oh,
March
okay.
as the decision.
Then I misspoke. My understanding is it's on their docket for February.
Got it, okay, so it isn't on the way.
You said that you were, anyway.
Oh, maybe I missed it.
I don't know.
Can we, so process wise, this is working out well, timeline, I feel like we're time wise for the meeting. It seems like we're moving towards a similar direction, but I wanted to, it's hard jumping into popcorn conversations like this. So if Kersey, Mark, or Kelly have any input in either direction with this, we'd welcome that conversation.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Even if we do this and it doesn't sway FERC in any way, I think it's still important to the community to communicate to the community of Bend that it's something we support. We want to be consistent with that climate action plan.
Yeah.
For those reasons.
And I think, I agree. I think the language matters. And that's like in other places we've drafted a letter ahead of time. And so it is an ask to not come with that, but with the timeline that we had, that's kind of where we were at. But recognizing that in a decarbonizing world, we don't need more natural gas, I think is the main message that we're hoping to share. So process wise, if this is it sounds like I'm hearing interest in recommending this, or I haven't heard. There's a question about potential conflicts, but if we do that, do we need to make a motion formally recommend as a committee?
I would think so.
So we would need some language to have as a motion if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So, Cassie formed this decision point question at the end. So using that, I guess a motion could look like committee.
I make a motion to recommend that the mayor submit a letter into the clerk record requesting denial of the pipeline expansion due to the increase in natural gas use conflicting with the city's adopted greenhouse gas reduction goals.
Is that from the memo?
That's the language in the memo. Great.
I tried to read it over again.
Can I get a second and then we'll discuss? Seconded by Serena. Any discussion on that specific language, which is almost verbatim what we have in here, but in motion form?
Do we want to add anything that says to be inconsistent with the state attorney general's office?
We could.
I would amend that one.
I think you
Just
would
those
add
words.
those words somewhere in there.
We just,
And the recommendation.
Or-
can just state that, can we just
We can add that additional
to the,
When we
support.
send it to the mayor, we can,
yeah, we'll be
Yeah.
sure to include that.
We can
The
add that
mayor
in
would-
like findings.
is still going to write how,
Yeah.
assuming that council and the mayor want to do it, they'd write, they can add what they want to the letter.
Yeah.
And I think I'd recommend that at the next council meeting, she could bring it up in council action and reports and get council buy-in.
I realized my mic wasn't eared. Is the motion still recorded, you think? Should we? Okay.
Wrote it down, or do you?
I mean,
I
it's
have it
it's
written
from the
down,
memo.
it's just,
Great.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're good, thank you.
So does that work with kind of just a general broader conversation, including in line with attorneys general, but it not being in the specific motion?
Sure.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your physical hand and or Zoom hand. That's all of us. Wow. Full attendance and full voting. This is great. Thanks for bringing this, Rory. And we still have 17 minutes
Unbelievable.
for our updates agenda
You're
review. So this is great. Both of those last two agenda items, we were like, these could be 15-minute or these could be hour-long conversations, depending on where the committee's at. So hopefully people read them ahead of time.
I have a feeling we'll blow right through the 17 minutes anyway.
Yeah, oh, you can do that too.
Yeah.
No worries.
I will see you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that's right, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, I guess Kelly, chime in if you have any updates or Cassie, if I missed anything, for the waste and materials subgroup. We met with the Environmental Center to talk through more their current programs and how they relate to the waste and materials specifically, and some of the goals and the programs they have in place. They're very robust. They do a great job with everything that they're doing. Our plan is to meet again as a subgroup between now and next month and draft up a recommendation for this team on how we want to move forward with that program. And then as a group, we'll talk through that and go into a lot more detail. Do I need to go into more specifics, or do you have anything?
No, I think that's it, just mainly the main thing. That's the main thing that's happened. And then the group's meeting again later this month to kind of figure out next steps related to that. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, I don't. Thank you, Karina, for the update.
excited to send over a recommendation for everybody to move forward. Get more things on the books.
And
Yeah.
then I'll give a quick or did you have a comment on the waste of materials?
No.
Okay, a quick update between the last meeting and now from the rebuilding task force at the state. We had our last meeting on December 13th, almost exactly a month ago, where we finalized our recommendations and voted on them. And where we're at in the state legislative cycle is those concepts and bills, and we expect a package of bills to come out of those recommendations. State staffers are taking those concepts and then actually writing them into bill language. And so we expect anytime now, those bills that came out of the rebuilding task force to be available to review and be entered into the legislative process. So that's an update there. When we have more specifics, I can share those in a memo to the group. But that process wrapped up and we're moving forward with the 2023 legislative cycle. And other communities have kind of knowing that those bills are coming, have adopted those as part of their city's legislative priorities as well. So we'll be talking about that as we get more details.
And we have flagged it for our lobbyists as well. We don't make we don't have any formal decisions around what's in or out, but we meet weekly during the session. So yeah, we're ready to, take a look at those when they come out, and Neil's going to keep us in the loop.
That's right.
Yes.
They're expected to be largely from the folks at the state legislature. They're expected to be the kind of main climate priorities of the 2023 legislative session, since we invested so much time in it. And it's kind of every year you chip away at something, and this is the year for buildings. But that's exciting.
Thank you.
I had a quick question, actually, going back to the waste and materials subgroup.
Mhm.
And I'll just, I guess, since I'm going to be recusing myself from some of those subgroup meetings, is it a good time now to see if somebody else is also interested in joining that subgroup, or should we wait until we're doing the whole kind of planning process that you mentioned that we're starting soon?
I think I would say now would be a good time, but because that group's getting ready to wrap up a recommendation, and I think it would be hard to just catch somebody up.
Yeah.
I think we may as well just wait until next month, but thank you for bringing that up. Otherwise it would make sense to just, recruit now.
Okay.
But related to that, the other update that I wanted to share is, we talked about this at the last meeting, but we have kind of a natural gas working group that is getting together. And I don't think you guys have met since the last meeting, have you?
Yep.
But we did want to check in and see if anyone is interested in joining that group. I'll ask Lauren as well. I'm going to see her tomorrow, but I think some short-term action items that I was hoping to facilitate is that we have both Cascade Natural Gas is extremely eager to talk to this committee. And so I'd like them to start with the working group first. So I'd like to set a meeting up to meet with some representatives from Cascade. And then I also think it would be a good idea to chat with 350 Deschutes is currently advocating for an electrification initiative. They've been emailing to council a lot, and so just they have also asked to meet. They wanted to come meet with the whole group as well. So they're another group that I would like to meet with, a natural gas group. And I think having those two discussions kind of close together makes sense.
Yeah.
So those are kind of in the next month to two. I would like to coordinate those. So we have Rory and Neil and Mark are all participating in that, but just kind of one last call to see if anyone else wanted to be a part of that group.
I'm trying to limit how many groups I join.
Okay, and I'll
Especially
ask
if other folks are interested in joining that.
And we'll, I think, be able to do a little, these are kind of our short-term
Yeah.
appointments, and then we'll be looking at things more broadly. So in terms of involving and laying out what the subgroups are and what the goals are, we'll have an opportunity to.
That's a good transition to next month.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not in this role.
No, it is.
Just
But
wanted
also
to see,
because my
so it's okay.
computer is about to die, so I really want to get this
Perfect.
slide up. So as far as upcoming agenda, so next month we'll have a presentation from our consultant on our greenhouse gas emissions inventory update. And I wanted to hold a whole hour for that, just so we can ask all the questions that we want to, because since that's such important like base data for us. And then we want to have kind of this work planning discussion that we talked about earlier, because we've talked about wanting to do a CCAP update. We've also talked about wanting to reprioritize the CCAP. And then we have some of the committee process stuff that we've wanted to discuss. And so I think this would be a good time, as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up this biennium, kind of looking ahead and saying, how do we want to get the update and the reprioritization done, and kind of put some dates on the calendar. So I kind of think those two topics might be all we can handle next month. So then for March, I was thinking that hopefully the waste and materials group will be ready to kind of provide their recommendation. And I think we can maybe have that be like, so we'll have a recommendation, potentially a recommendation related to one program, but with the group, we'll also talk about the other aspects of the waste and materials. It can kind of be like a more comprehensive update too, if there are, oh no, it's dead. If there are other components, I can send it to you. So anyway, so that's all we have for sure on docket for March. But as we do the work planning, we'll of course identify all of these things that we can get into, starting in March. And then on the list of other upcoming topics I had, they were mainly around doing some of that progress updating for you all to the extent that we have it. So I'm hoping by March, certainly by April, I'll be able to kind of show a draft of the dashboard that we're putting together, where we are attempting to track our progress and kind of show you what we are able to track, where we still have gaps, and what that looks like. And then I can also share an update. This was a request that had mainly come from Bill, but if the committee's interested, I can provide an update on what we've been doing on the city operations and facility side, because we do have a climate action plan for that, and we have been implementing that, and it's just not something that we've discussed in here. So those were there was one more. Those were the upcoming topics I had that we can kind of build in. So again, when we're doing our work planning, we can figure out where that makes sense, and it may make sense to do those kind of upfront in March and April, especially with new committee members, and we'll have 2 new additional committee members. It's a good time to kind of do some of that, like just progress reporting. And there was one more, but I don't remember what it was.
Prioritization. I don't know if that's already.
Oh, maybe that was part of it. Yeah, so that'll all be part of the work planning, I think. So that's the plan. Does that sound good as far as at least February and March?
Yeah.
Cool.
Lots of fun things.
This has never happened to us.
That's funny. We had a pretty packed agenda too today.
Well, there are just a lot of.
No time for lunch break.
All right, hands in. Thanks everybody that joined remote for being present, and welcome to our new 2 committee members, and we'll get to meet our new committee members later. Good to see you, Percy. Welcome back.
Good to see you, Percy.
So I think with that,